So today we're going to be covering the last book of the poetic the books in the Old Testament, which is the Song of Solomon. I don't know if any one of you have ever learned about the Song of Solomon's, but I highly doubt that you actually just got to really learn about the Song of Solomon that much because Song of Solomon is not a common book that pastors use for their sermons, and it's rarely that references the Song of Solomon. So many people know about the Song of Solomon's, but it's rarely referenced in our Christian life. So it is very difficult for us to really just to get to learn about the Song of Solomon's. When you look at the Song of Solomon's, it's probably the shortest book in the entire Old Testament and New Testament combined. It's only like not actually New Testament, Old Testament. The very short. It is only 8 chapters, so it's not a long read. I mean, literally, if you really want to read this, you can just read in like 15 minutes. Literally, that's how short this the book is. So it is not really long, but it's not being really popular or not being taught in the church. There are a few reasons why is that. First of all, not many people know that the book, the Song of Solomon, is one of the hardest book in Old Testament. And you may be surprised, like to hear, like, what? Song of Solomon is the hardest book, and I mean, this is very short and it seems to be very simple. But this is one of the controversial and one of the complicated book in the Old Testament. That's why not many people really just want to use this book and teach because it is so complicated. That's why people mostly just don't touch this book because they don't know how to interpret it, they don't know how to explain, they don't know how to actually just use this book to really to teach the things. There are a few things in this book. Interestingly, there is no word of God, Jehovah, or Lord. There's no such word in this book. So how can you really just, this book is in the Bible because there's no God, Lord, there's no faith, and there's no worship, and there's no praise. I mean, what is this book? And this has been one of the challenge of this book because there are a few books in the Old Testament that's been controversial to be included in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. Out of some of the books in the Old Testament, the Song of Solomon as well as the Esther's been books that it's been very, very complicated, and at the same time, and it's just a controversy that many people discussed whether people should be including these two books in the Bible or not. So the Song of Solomon's came into the Old Testament and really just accepted as the Bible in AD 400 almost. So it took very, very long time to be included in the Bible. So you could understand why it is so difficult for many of the scholars as well as the rabbis to really just to interpret this book. And still it is very difficult to interpret it. And there's still a lot of a controversy as to like how we should just really interpret this book. And as I mentioned, that's because there's no such word in Jehovah's or God or Lord. It's just difficult to really just interpret it. When you look at the actual chapter 8, you will see here, well, let's go to chapter 8 for a moment. Verse 6 says this, "Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is as strong as death, and jealousy is as fierce as a grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord." So you will see here is that actually a reference as the Lord, but when you look at the actual Hebrew word, there's no word of the Lord. It's just included in here. But yes, there's a Yah. Yah, it is actually, it's almost the same as Hosea, Isaiah. Yah means, eventually that means Jehovah. However, you don't really use Yah as just a word to reference the God alone. So this is why you don't see God or Lord in this book, even though we may actually see in translated version as the Lord, but in actual Hebrew word, there's no such a word. So just to kind of give you some of the background of this particular book, and as I mentioned, it is kind of a controversial, and in the old days, people used to reference or interpret this as more of allegorical approach, means it's just used as just a metaphor. Some scholars or some rabbi actually interpret it as, oh, this book is about the how God actually loved the Lord, loved the Israel, and then how they led the Israelites out of Egypt, and how God really loved Israel. So they kind of break it down to the times. These are the chapter 1 through chapter 4 is the time from the Moses to the David, and from the David time to somewhere else. So people just try to apply in different ways, and until 19th centuries, this the allegorical approach has been applied throughout the entire Christianity. But in a more modern days, the allegorical approach has been diminished, and now people start to look at things a little bit differently. However, even though this book is very short, and you can kind of tell how the scholars and the pastors and preachers been struggling to really interpret this particular book. There's no way we can actually completely avoid the allegorical approach. However, we don't want to just over interpret it or over metaphorize this book. So we have to be very careful of how we interpreted this, and we have to be just like more, we kind of need to kind of balance this out as to like having this book to be more of literal interpretations, and there's some mixture of some allegorical approach. So there's going to be a little bit of a mixture of here or two. So just to give you some background as to how this book is really structured, one of the challenges for the many of the scholars as well as the preachers of interpreting this book is because in Israel and from more Jewish traditions, the Song of Solomon's has been sort of a prohibited for the younger people to read this. And traditionally, it's been only married and over 30 years old age. Now you can read this Song of Solomon's. Before that, you're not supposed to read this. So that's how, difficult it is for a lot of people to really just like read and interpret it. One of the reason is this book talks about the love of Solomon's and the woman, but there's a lot of erotic expressions or a little bit of a sexual content in the Bible. So this is why that it's not common books that preachers use, because it is not comfortable for a lot of the preachers to really just reference those the verses or context. It is just not comfortable for them to really just read or interpret it, because it could be misinterpreted by the audience or the congregation. So this is why this book, it is not commonly referenced in the most of the preaching. But one thing that we need to keep in mind here is the Song of Solomon is part of the Bible. So you cannot just avoid or just not explaining this book. It is a very important book, and if God actually used this book in the Bible, we really need to understand what God is trying to teach us and what it really means to us. So most common way for us to interpret this book is this is between God and Israel and the Christ to church, the love relationship between God and us. And that's how we sort of, interpret it. So we not only have to look at it from the literature perspective, but at the same time more allegorical, perspective as well. So we're going to try to just to kind of like look at it from various different perspectives, but I just want to people to really understand some of the backgrounds and why this book hasn't been really common to many of the peoples, and why you don't really hear much about this Song of Solomon's in the typical preaching. So obviously, this book is written by Solomon. Some people say it is not Solomon, but mostly known as this is a book of a Solomon. When you look at the Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon's and Job, obviously those are all part of the Psalms. And obviously this is the last book of the Psalm, literally. And in order for us to really understand why people structured this way, that put this a Song of Solomon's at the end of those Psalms. So let's just to keep that in mind. The end is about love. When you look at the actual Bible is about love. If you just sum up the entire Bible in one word, is love. It's not faith. It is not hope. It's not something else. It's not worship. It's not praising. It's about love. The entire book is about love. So if you look at that, look at the Bible as just love story, it is pretty much it's the right way to interpret this Bible. Of course, this is a book about Jesus Christ, but how Jesus Christ really loved us and how we loved him. And it is a story, literally. So it's a love letter to us. And you probably never seen love letter that it is long as this book, but literally this is actually the book that expressed how God loved us and how we love him. And that's, if you put it in that context, then you would probably understand better on this one. So, as I mentioned, even though there is a lot of lack of the lack of theological interpretations of this book, we're gonna just try to just read as it is, and then see what we can get out of this book. And as long as we actually kind of put us in that context, I think we'll see it better, and we can actually understand a little better on this one. One thing that we need to keep in mind here is, as we read this book, and I just want to turn to Philippians. Philippians chapter 4. We're going to read from verse 8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things, and what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me. Practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. So whenever we read and then whenever we interpret it, and we need to interpret it the similar way as Apostle Paul explained to us. So you have to take it as really purely context of how God truly loved us. And also when you turn to 1 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We're going to read from verse 31. So, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greek or to the church of God. So, however we interpreted this Song of Solomon's, we need to really interpret it something it is actually for the glory of God, and at the same time how we actually seek how God loved us and how we love the Lord. And that's how we should really keep ourselves in that context. Don't go outside of that context and not just interpret it however you want to interpret it. Even though there's lots of erotic expressions are coming out, you have to just put it in that context. So this is something that we really need to be really put ourselves in that context in order for us to really interpret this. So as long as we keep that in mind, and we will actually be able to really just interpret this book much better than we anticipated. This book was actually written by Solomon in the younger age rather than a later age. So when we actually learned Ecclesiastes, of course, as I mentioned, he wrote Ecclesiastes almost at the tail end of his life. So after he experienced everything, after he'd gone through all his life, he understood exactly what is important in his life. However, this book is an opposite. He wrote this book in the much younger age. how do we know this book was actually wrote when he was younger age? Is because when you turn to Song of Solomon's chapter 6, verse 8. There are 60 queens and 80 concubines and virgins without number. So in this context, it says there are 60 queens and 80 concubines. But when you actually go to the First Kings, chapter 11, First Kings chapter 11, when you look at the verse 3, he had 700 wives who were princesses and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. So as you can see here, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. But when you look at the Song of Solomon's, he only references that there's only 60 queens and 80 concubines, which means he still has a long way to go, right? You still have to get married to the many other wives and concubines. So, this is why we believe that this was actually written when he was a younger age, right? So, when you think about it, of course, age does not really just have anything to do with love. However, when you're at younger age, when you fall in love, it's a little bit different than when you feel love in a later age. It is just different feelings. So when you look back at the younger age, it's more passionate. It is more flammable, and it's just a different kinds of it. Sometimes this feels more reckless in a younger age because they just don't care about anything. Of course, even at the later age, love feels that way, but it's just a little bit different level or different kinds of love. So when you look at this Song of Solomon's, we can see that love they are discussing here is more passionate, and they're more reckless, and they're more like burning type of things. So it's a little bit more younger age love than and the older age love. So you can probably see a little better later on as we read this one. But this love between the Solomons and this woman is just expressed in a very poetic way, and sometimes the way they're expressing it is just like they're trying to just explain their love, but they just could not really express in words. So just like how you read the poem, even though it's a very short sentence, in that short sentence, there's a lots of meanings included in that very short, even word or that very short sentence. It is better than writing an essay than just, there are a lot more meanings and a lot more expressions and a lot more love in the very short context. So this Song of Solomon is written that way. So it's more poetic expressions than just like expressing in, very long way. Right? So sometimes it may be a little bit difficult for us to really just understand exactly what they're saying, but at the same time, when we actually look at it from the more poetic way to express their love and their feelings, and you probably get better understand. And sometimes, even for me, I love poetry, but sometimes I understand better with poetry, but sometimes it's very difficult to understand from poetic expression because it includes very different and diverse way to really a variety of way to express that their feelings in very short expressions. So, um, just to keep that in mind as we just read this book. Obviously, Solomon wrote many, many poems and proverbs. So let's just go to 1 Kings chapter 4. First Kings chapter 4. We're going to read from verse 29. 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 29 and on. And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure, and breadth of mind like the sand of the seashore, so that Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all other men, wiser than Ethans and Ezrahite and Heman, Karkol, or Darda, the son of Mahol, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. He also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of trees from the cedars and that is in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. He spoke also breast and of birds and reptiles and of fish. All people of all nations came to hear the wisdom of Solomon's, and from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. According to this, actually, the verse, obviously there's a lots of things that Solomon wrote. And out of that, he wrote almost 1,005 songs, which is part of the Psalms. But let me ask you this. How many Psalms have we seen how many Solomon's Psalms have we seen in the Psalm, the book of Psalm? How many Solomon's Psalms have we seen? Do you remember? It's not long ago that we learned Psalms. But how many Psalms have we seen?
Most of them were written by David.
Yeah, most of them are written by David, but there is Solomon's Psalms as well. So when you turn to Psalms chapter 72, Solomon's, when you actually look at the Psalm chapter 72, you will see at the very beginning of Solomon. You see that? Right? Give the king your justice, O God, and your righteousness to the royal sons. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor and justice. So this particular book, Psalm 72, is a reference as a Solomon's songs. But this is really not a Solomon's songs. This is mostly what David said rather than Solomon. How do we know? When you actually get to the last part of the Psalm 72 at the end, this is how it ends. Verse 20, the prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended. So, whose prayer is this? Is that Solomon's prayer or the David's prayer? It is a David's prayer. Even though Solomon might have actually wrote it, this is the prayers of his father. So it is literally reference of his father's prayer rather than his words. So even though it is written by Solomon, or it could be, he wrote it, but most content is about David's, the songs. And there's another one. If you can turn to Psalm chapter 127. Psalms 127. And you will see at the top a song of ascendant of Solomon's. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor is in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved the sleep. Behold, the children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemy in the gate. It's almost like summary of Ecclesiastes. You kind of understand when you actually look at the verse 2, it is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious oil, for he gives to his beloved the sleep. So he realized that even though the watchmen go over to the cities and they stays up, they try to protect, but it's all vain unless God is there to protect and unless the God really gives them what they need. So it's very similar to the contents of the Ecclesiastes, and he wrote the songs, and we see this Solomon's songs in Psalms. However, even if he include Psalm chapter 72, there's only 2 songs recorded in Psalms. Only 2 songs recorded in the Solomon's songs in the Psalms. And First King says he wrote almost 1,005 songs, but obviously there was only 2 songs recorded or documented. If we actually include this Song of Solomon's, well, now we have 3 songs. But what is the title of this book? The Song of Solomon. So what does that mean, Song of Solomon's? So when we actually say the Lord of the Lord, the King of the Kings, the God of gods, what does that really mean? That means the best, or the highest, right? The King of Kings means out of many kings, he's the true kings. It is the top of the kings, right? So the way it starts is Shir Hashirim, which means Song of Songs. Ased Le Solomon, which means this is Solomon's Song of Songs. Even though he wrote many songs, many of them are really, really wise and included wisdom. And out of all those 1,005 songs he wrote, this is the best songs he ever wrote. So this is the best of what song the Solomon wrote out of many other songs that he wrote. Even though each and every songs that he wrote is beautiful and included with the lots of wisdoms. However, out of all that songs he wrote, this is the best. So, if Solomon put all his wisdoms to write the best songs, this is it. So you could imagine. So it is important for us to really just understand this particular song is really, really important to us and understand what it really means. So when you look at the 1 Corinthians chapter 13, what comes to your mind? 1 Corinthians chapter 13, what is it? It's about book of love, right? So let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. We're going to read from verse 1. If I speak in the tongue of man and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or clanging cymbals. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith, so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its way, its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoice with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongue, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I responded like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish way. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abides, these three, but the greatest of there is love. So what is the greatest? Love is. Love is something we cannot avoid in our life. Can we really? We could live without money. We could live with some other stuff, but we cannot live without love. Love is part of our life. That's something we cannot avoid. If we don't have a love in our heart, we feel lonely and we feel empty and we feel nothing if we don't have love in our heart. Love, it is a very, very important part of our life. And sometimes we can give up even our life for love. That's why I mentioned love can be very reckless. That's why people give their life for love. They're not hesitant to give their life for love. When you look at it, love between their parents to their child, they can give up anything what they have for their child. And even with men and women, they can give their life for their loved one. Right? So love is very powerful. Love is really passionate. Love it is something that we cannot avoid in our life. Love it's essential and is the most critical part of our life. So understanding love is important. But we talk about love. But how much do we know about love? Sometimes people misunderstand the love and they just misuse those love, and they use it as the tools to possess what they want. So this is sometimes people say, I need you. I need you. Or I want you. I love you because I need you. I love you because I need you. Because I feel that I'm empty, that I feel lonely, that I feel, just feel so lonely that I need someone to just fulfill me. So I love you because I need you. Or you can say, I need you because I love you. There's a difference between I love you because I need you versus I need you because I love you. There's a big difference. So how do we actually just express and how do we feel those love? So when you think about the relationship between God and us, does God love us because he needs something from us? Or because he loves us even though he doesn't need anything? He needs us because he loves us. Not because he needs us to love us. He doesn't need us, but he loves us. But from our perspective, from the man's perspective, how do we love the Lord? When do we really come to the Lord? When do we really come to pray to the Lord? When we need something from him. We try everything. We have done a lot of stuff, but when we just don't get what we really need or what we want, then we come to the Lord and say, well, I need you, Lord. What is that relationship between love and need? Do we actually come to the Lord because I need something? That's not true love. This is why I mentioned, do you love because you need something? Or you need him because you love him? Which one is it? So there's a big difference. From God's perspective, he needs us because he loves us. But from our perspective, we love him because we need him. Because we want to get something we want. So that's not true love. There's a different kinds of love. So how do we really just feel the love and how do we actually express the love? Even though we talk about love in our life, everyone's got different interpretations of love, right? When I talk about love, maybe different definition of love than you define how you feel and how you think it is love. Everyone's got different definition and different interpretation of love. So what is the perfect love? One of the things that philosophers from old days been discussed is, what is a life? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Life in general has been discussed and thought about. Love is another. What is love? What is love? Can we clearly define and can we describe well what love is? If I ask you, give me your definition of love, then you probably think about, okay, love is this, or love is that. But do you feel that your definition love is perfect or imperfect? You feel that it's imperfect. No matter how we describe it, it seems like it is imperfect. there's no way for us to really just express or explain what love is, because it's just so much. It is just like it's indescribable feelings is love. You just don't know how to describe it. Because sometimes when you fall in love with someone, when you try to explain how you feel, can you really express your feeling in words or express it right? I mean, since some of you are recently just married, I mean, you've been in love and you're still in love with your spouse, more passionately. So when you actually express your feelings to your spouse and your loved ones, can you freely express your feelings? I can't. I don't know how to explain those feelings because I don't know what word to use and what vocabulary to use to really express my feeling, because it's so much, but the word is not enough to express my feelings, because it's just I can't express what it is. But since my vocabulary is very, very limited what I can express, it is like I could only explain this much, even though my love is this big. Right? That's love. So then, this Song of Solomon's is trying to explain the love between Solomon and a woman. And of course, it's between God and Israel, and God and the Christ and church. So it's indescribable. It's not perfect to describe what it is and how it feels. So if you actually think about from that perspective, this is why the Song of Solomon's or Song of Songs is about love. Because this is the greatest, this is the best of the songs you could ever write. That is love. In that context, then you can kind of understand what the Solomon is trying to express. So with that, there are two things we can actually think of. So there are 4 different types of people in this book. There's only limited characters in this particular book. There are 2 main characters. The first main character is Solomon, obviously. And there's another woman. So that woman, here it is a reference. Let's just go to let's go to the Song of Solomon's chapter 6, verse 13. Song of Solomon's chapter 6, verse 13. Return, return, O Shulamite, return, return, that we may look upon you. So, Shulamite. This is love between Solomon and Shulamite. Okay? So there's a Solomon, Shulamite, and the third character is her siblings, her brothers and sisters. Another character is the daughters of Israel. So those are the 4 different types of people that you will see in this book. There are no others. There are only 4 different types of people. One thing to keep in mind here is there are 2 main characters. Of course, there's Shulamite's siblings and the daughters of Israel, but obviously they're not the main character. They're supporting characters, right? Who are the main characters? The main characters in this book is Solomon and Shulamite. Those are the 2 main characters. And out of that 2 main characters, who is the most important character? Who do you think it is the most important characters in this book? Is it a Solomon's or a Shulamite? Who do you think is the main character? Who? Solomon? Solomon? Shulamite? Why do you think is a Shulamite? A love letter between the two, though. Right? But why Shulamite? What made you to think it is a Shulamite?
The author is the man, and the reason he write this is to write to the woman.
Okay. Obviously, this is between, I said the two main characters are Solomon's and Shulamite. There are about 171 verses in this book. A total of 171 verses. Out of that 171 verses, more than a half, the Shulamite is talking. She has the most part of it, literally. So, she's the one who's talking the most. Okay? So, main characters in this book is Shulamite. So, if there's a two main characters, a Solomon's and Shulamite, something is interesting about these two. What is this interesting? So think about this for a moment. Solomon. What is the meaning of a Solomon? What is the meaning of a Solomon? Solomon name came from certain meaning. Which meaning? Shalom. What is a shalom?
Peace.
Peace. Shalom. Solomon, it's a saying. So in Hebrew, there's what it's called shoresh. Shoresh is root word. Root word is, in Hebrew, even there is a multiple different words, but it came from the same root. Example is Shalom and Solomon has the same root. The root in Hebrew called shoresh. That Solomon's, it is actually has Shin, Lamed, Mem. Those three alphabets of Hebrews are made up Solomon. So out of that, Solomon's and Shalom, both of them came from the same shoresh, Shin, Lamed, Mem. Those three characters or three alphabet makes up that name, or then make up those two words, Solomon's and Shalom. And this Solomon or Solomon is peace. This woman, we don't know what her name is because the name does not come up here in this book. She is referenced as Shulamite. Shulamite. Solomon, Shulamite. It has the same shoresh. Shin, Lamed, Mem. Shulamite, Solomon. Very similar. It came from the same root. What is it? Peace. During the time of Solomon's reign, there was no war. There was a peace in Israel. During his time, even though other, like David and the first kings of Israel, Saul, and other generations or other kings after Solomon's, there was always war. But in time of Solomon, there was no war. There was a peace in the land of Israel. That's why his name is Solomon. Solomon, Shulamite, has the same shorish, came from the root of peace. So it has a meaning to it. So let's go back to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 4. Is that 4? Yeah. Let's see. No, it's not 4. No, it's 9. Sorry, it's not 4, 9. Isaiah chapter 9. We're going to read from verse 6. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Who is he referencing? Obviously, Isaiah is referencing Jesus, the Prince of Peace. So then, Solomon, what is it? He's the Prince of Peace. He's the King of a peace. His name reference his peace. So Solomon himself is the metaphor of a Jesus Christ. Why did God actually send Jesus to this earth? To forgive our sins. And as he gives us salvation, what do we feel in our heart? Peace. He gave us a peace because he's the Prince of Peace. And he gave us a peace. And King is in peace, and his people is in peace. Solomon, Shulamite, they're in peace. So this Song of Solomon's references that. We're in peace. Who gave that peace? The Solomon. So you can see why her name is not referenced in here, but instead she is referenced as Shulamite. So this is very important for us to really just understand, because Jesus is the Prince of a Peace who came to this earth to give us a peace, to the church. So this not only references God and Israel, but at the same time, Jesus Christ to the church. Some people actually just reference it as Shulamite is of course is just the area, is a sort of a town, and many of the people reference that, oh, where's a Shalom? Oh, Shalom might have actually came from the province of Shunem. Shunem. So let me see if I have a picture of that. Let me see if I have that. Okay, here we go. Let me share my screen. Do you see this? It's read shalom. As you can see here, shalom. Right? And me new share. Stop sharing, and then oops. There it is. Okay, you see my screen? All right, this is the map of Israel. So obviously, this is Galilee, this is Dead Sea, and this is the Jordan River. When you actually see this, Shunem, this is a Shunem, is what many people reference as a shalom. That's the one that I just showed you. The sign shalom is referenced as a Shunem. But we don't know whether this is a shalom is actual Shunem or what they reference as a shalom as the signs that we just saw. But this area, if the Shunem is the correct area, obviously this is a little bit of the northwest of the Galilee river here. I mean, not the Galilee Sea. So you will see it right here. But no one knows whether that is the actual shalom that is referenced in the Bible. So, with that in, we're just going to dive into the actual words of this. So let's go to the Song of Solomon's, chapter 1. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. So the way this Song of Solomon is structured is like similar to opera, or you can think of it as more of, in today's world, more musical. So there's a certain character comes on the stage and sings some things, and then other groups of people just join them and then, sing along with that main characters and so forth. So you will see the characters comes in and out of it. And the way it starts is the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. So as it starts, he starts with kisses, right? You don't have to wait anything. It's just sort of jump right in. It kisses me. Okay, all right, stop here a second. Like, let's slow down. Let's just start slow here. But he just doesn't wait. He just jump right in. It's kiss me. But the way you see things here is, it's very nicely actually put it in this, the English context or in another different language. It's just, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. So the way it expressed in Hebrew words, it's like when you actually just completely emerged into love, that you're like so passionate that you have the burning desire to have that person, right? You just don't know what to do about it. Like it's like, kiss me. Like it's not just like nicely kissing you. It's just not like that. It's just like, give me kiss everywhere, everywhere that you can touch. Like kiss me. You see what I mean? It's just like you're deeply in love. You just don't know what to do about it. Like you're just like, kiss me. So it's just not just simply saying like, kiss me. It's not like that. It's just like, it is really with the burning desire that it's like she is just having him kiss me with everywhere that you can touch me. All my body, kiss me. You see, understand how passionately she's just desiring for him to kiss. So this is the where people get like, it's like hook. It's like at the very beginning, like, okay, so hold on, hold on a second. That's not how it starts. Like we just start very slow. It's like, all right, just come near me and touch me. Like just jump right in, like kiss me. So this is like where people get like nervous. Like, okay, so all right, hold on a second. But just with the passions and the love, the burning desire that she has, just let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. It's like full mouth, just like kiss me. So that is like really passionate and burning desire to have him really just kiss me. For your love is better than wine, obviously. For a people, the lovers, would you really care for drinking wine versus being kissed? Which one would you prefer? Drinking wine? If you prefer wine, you're not in really passionate love. Right? You just jump right into the person who really love. You would not hesitate. You don't want to just sit there just drinking wine, right? Of course, you're drinking wine to begin. That's how you were actually just getting into the mood and getting to the certain points, and then get to the kissing point. But it is we're just skip that stage. Like don't go slow. Just jump right in, right? For your love is better than wine. So, for those of the people who, like person like me, I'm not a drinker. I don't drink alcohol. So, if I actually have a sip of wine, my face turns literally just red, blush, right? And then when I just drink one wine, or just have a sip of a beer or something, like it's just my face just turned completely red. And then of course not only just my face gets red, but at the same time I get warmed up because my heart starts to like beat up, and like I feel like the heat. Right? For those of people who drink well, obviously just one drinks of wine, or the sip of beers, and you don't feel anything. I'm not like that. I just drink one sip of wines and one sip of beers, and I'm already like heat up. When do you actually just feel heat up? What do you feel? Like when you actually feel the love, the first thing that happens is your heart start to beating so fast, right? It is just pumping, right? Your blood is circulating so fast that you get like warmed up, right? And your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant, and your name is oil poured out. So, your anointing oils are fragrant. Think about it. When you actually go for a date, when you go for a date, do you actually, when you're dating, do you really just go out with your sweat? Or you just go home and take a showers and put a perfume on, and then comb your hairs and make some makeup, and then you put a little perfume over it, and then you go out and meet your loved one, right? We want to just smell some fragrance from the loved one, right? So it said your anointing oils are fragrant because you are full of fragrance. Your oils are all over your body. And then I like that smell. When you actually feel not someone who actually put on too much of a perfume that it like stinks, right? Sometimes you put too much of perfume like, oh no. But when you actually put on a nice perfumes and it's just like, oh, it smells really nice. There's a difference between someone who is actually nicely perfumed versus put on some like nasty perfume and then smells really, nasty. What do you want to smell from your loved one? Smell something nice. Fragrance, right? It smells something good. And that's what she actually smells from her lover. Your name is oil poured out. So it's like fragrance and your name is oil poured out. It's so nice, soothing. Your name is so lovely. Just by calling that name. And it's like when you're in love, when you call that name, it is just so lovely. When you call out that name, it's just, think about it. Just go back to the time when you were in love. Do you think about your loved one's name all the time? Does that name comes to your mind all the time? Does that actually sticks to your heart? Just your lover's name. You just want to just to keep remember his name or her name. Why? Because you're in love. Your name is oil poured out. There are virgins love you. What does that mean? All women, all virgins loves you because he's so lovely. He's so lovely. Draw me after you. Let us run. So as I mentioned, this woman, it does not take steps. Literally, it says, kiss me and draw me after you. Let us run. What does that mean? Take me to your room. So then, why would you actually go into the room? When you're passionately in love, why would you want to go into the room? To have more talk? To just have more wine? Why would you actually taking the woman into the room? I mean, for a woman, you may not understand like what the man thinks, right? When man is taking the woman into the room, it's not to have a little more talk, to have a little more wine. Why is that man taking the woman into the room? Because you're passionate, you're in love, you're drawing the woman into the room to have a love, to making love with the woman you love, right? And she's saying, draw me after you, let us run to it. Rushing into the room to do what? Making love. It's making love. So, as I mentioned at the very beginning of, now you understand why I actually, spend 30 minutes or 45 minutes trying to explain to you what the Song of a Song means, because it, not like any other books that we have read, it's just, there's a lot of erotic moments and erotic expressions of love, which is not the same as the rest of the book that we have learned. So people could misunderstand and misinterpret this. So this is something we have to be very, very careful how we interpret it, because just jump right into just having kisses and then just jumping right into the bed to just making love. That's how it starts at the very beginning, right? So people can just misinterpret this particular verse. But you could imagine when you are in love, when you're passionately, you desiring someone who you really love, what do you really want? So when we meet someone, whether it's your woman or man, when you actually meet someone, you don't jump right in to bed. You don't just kiss someone, as you meet. You don't do that, right? Why? Because you need to build those relationship, and you need to feel that. You just don't start to kiss someone. You don't just take, either man or woman into the bed. We kind of have phases to get to that level. But this is like jump right in. No waiting, no phases, just go right in. And she's saying, draw me after you, let us run. The king has brought me into his chambers. So at the very beginning, they're already making love. At the very beginning. Why? Because they're so passionately in love. It's passionately love. Of course, as we get into a little further down, then express how they got to this point, of course. But without even explaining anything, it doesn't really just taking the steps on why they got to the point where they are now, but just step right into the bed first, and then they try to explain what happened. So, the king has brought me into his chambers. Now, this is what Shulamite is talking. Now, others are coming in. So, as I mentioned, this is more the operatic or more the types of, musical type of, the posture here. So, others are joining in and says, we will exalt and rejoice in you. We will extort your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. So, others are coming in as they're making love. They're just praising about their love. Yes, your love is something that is really worthy. Love is so precious. So, you could imagine you're actually, going into the theater, right? Watching musical or opera, and then, the woman and a man comes in and jump right into the bed, and there's the backstage, the singers are coming out and they're sing along, watching them, the making love, and they're praising about it. So that's the kind of like, the image that you can think of. And they're saying, we will exult and rejoice in you. We will extol your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. So let's just put that in more of a God and Israel and Jesus Christ with the church. How much that Christ loves church, or how much the church loves the Christ. So this is like mutual relationship at how much they love each other. When you think about the time when you are in love, you first meet someone and then you want to be near them, right? You want to get close to that person. When you're actually getting close to the person, what's next? You want to touch that person. You want to grab or his or her hands, right? When you actually start touching them, is that good enough? That's not good enough. You want to hug that person, right? You want to hug that person. When you actually hug that person, is that good enough? No, that's not where it ends, right? Once you start hugging someone and you feel the warmth and you feel the love and you feel that you're connected, what's next? Next is when you start making love. When you start making love, then you feel that you are united. You're become one. You're in me, I'm in you. Remember the John chapter 15, what Jesus said? I'm the vine, you're the branches. And then what did he say? I'm in you, you're in me. What does that mean? That's the love. It's just not hugging is not good enough. Touching is not good enough. I want to make love with you. I want to be one. I want you to be in me. I want me to be in you. Why? Why? Because when we go back to Genesis, God created Adam. And then God took the bone from the man and then made a woman. So where did the woman come from? From Adam, right? There were one piece, but God actually took the bones and made a woman. Now became two. So when you actually go back to Genesis for a second. Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 2, verse 21 and on. So the Lord God causes a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept took one of his ribs and closed up his place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man he made into a woman, and brought her to the man. Then the man said, This at last is bone of my bones, the flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore man shall leave his father and his mother, and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So, there was only one man, Adam, and God took the bones from Adam, created a woman, so now one became two. And then what's the next step? God brought them together and then united it again. So one was there, became two, two became one again. That's the entire story of the Bible. That's the entire story of the Bible. Why Jesus said, I'm the vine, you're the branch? Because you cannot separate it. The vine and the branch cannot be separated. It's just one piece. And then Jesus says, I'm in you, you're in me. Because one became two, two became one again. So we have to be united with God again. We have to be united with Jesus. That's a love. We became one. If one person and another person, if they don't unite, what happens? We became two, not one. Right? Sometimes that's how you feel. Sometimes you feel the love from your loved one. You feel like you're connected. You're just one piece. But when you start to feel that you're disconnected, when you feel that you're just feel like distance from your partner, you don't feel like you're connected. You're not one. It's two. It's not one anymore. It's just two. Stays two. It cannot be one. But when you're in love, you want to be one instead of two. That's exactly what this is talking about. Coming back to Song of Solomon, verse 5 says, I am very dark, but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon's. I am very dark. She's not African. Why is she saying, I am very dark? That's because she is taking care of the vineyard. So let's continue on. Let's go a little more. Verse 6. Do not gaze at me because I am dark, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. What does that mean? Her siblings, a mother's sons. Her mother's sons. So then who? Who is these people? Her brothers. But instead of she saying, my brothers, she says, my mother's son. So most likely, these sons, mother's sons, it is not the direct brothers, but rather step brothers. Maybe the mother is the same, but the father is different. So she's referencing as my mother's son. So it's like, if you remember from the Genesis, Joseph had a lots of brothers, right? He has a lot of brothers, but he has only one brothers. Benjamin was the real brothers, but the rest of other brothers are step brothers, right? The father is the same, but all the mothers are different, right? So then what happens to the, Joseph? His brother really hated him and sold him, right, to the merchant. Similar situations. So she's not really loved by her step brothers, but instead her step brothers pushed her out to the vineyard to take care of the vineyard. So while she's actually at the vineyard, obviously, since she's working all day under the sun, what happens to her face? She's literally burned and tanned because she's been working in the vineyard all day long. So her face become dark, right? You may say, like, today's world of women's wants to get tanned to make her, make them look, much more healthier and look, better. But in the back then, it is not about getting tanned, right? Woman is just literally working under the suns, and her face and her bodies become like dark because of the sun. So what happened? People look at her and say, like, hey, that's, dark-skinned woman. So people were looking down on her. Because think about it. The woman, noble women, they don't really just exposed under the sun. They stayed in the inside, right? So then the woman's skins must be whiter rather than darker, right? So the whiter skins is considered as a more of a noble woman's versus dark skin is the worker or slave, right? So dark-skinned women is not considered as someone who are worthy or noble. Of course, people coming from the certain regions, of course, their skins are just naturally dark. But this is not about natural darkness of her color, skin color. But it's rather she was a little burned, and she was literally just, working under the suns, and her skin became dark. So a lot of people looks at her and say, hey, you dark-skinned woman. So they're kind of looking down on her. But from the Solomon's perspective, he's in love with this woman. So then, what do you think you feel when you're in love? Do you think this dark skin matters to Solomon? Has Solomon seen a lot of a whiter skinned woman? Of course. He has seen all these women, the noble women with white skins. But from the Solomon's perspective, he doesn't care whether her skin is white or dark. Why? Because Solomon is in love with this woman. When you're in love with someone, even their weakness, their mistakes could be just embraced. Right? When you're in love, you like about that person literally everything. There's nothing to really just hate about. You just love because you are in love. So she's saying, I am very dark but lovely. Even though people look at me as I'm a dark-skinned woman and I'm tanned, so people look down on me, but to Solomon's, I'm lovely. I'm lovely because he's in love with her. O daughters of a Jerusalem, like the tent of a Kedar. So tent of Kedar is like the you can think of the sheep, the goat skins, dark goat skins. So that's what the tents of Kedar. So her skin is a dark. Do not gaze at me because I am dark. Because, like I mentioned, she's been working under the sun, so her skin became dark. Because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyard. So she's not being loved by her siblings. Just like the Joseph, his brothers did not like him. And then sold him to the merchant. Same thing. She's not being loved by her own siblings, and she has been pushed out to the vineyard to work. But my own vineyard I have not kept. Tell me, to whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock? Where you make it lie down at noon. But even though she's in the vineyard, because she's in love with Solomon's, she's saying, tell me, you whom my soul loves, I'm in love with you. My entire soul's in love with you. Where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon. Where are you? Which area, which pasture are you lie down on? Why is she asking? Because she wants to be with him and lying down with him. The way the Song of Solomon express is that even though it is a Solomon, at the very beginning, which we're going to see later on, Solomon came in as the shepherd. When Shulamite met the Solomon, she did not know the Solomon was a king. Because the Solomon came in as the shepherd. So when she met Solomon, she thought he was the shepherd. Later on, she finds out that the shepherd that she fell in love with was the king. So, from that perspective, what do you see there? Jesus Christ came in as a shepherd and as a sheep. When he returns, does he coming back as a sheep or shepherd? Or does he come as a king? he comes back as a king, not as a sheep, not as a shepherd anymore. He's going to come back as the king. Same thing. So she's at the vineyard, and she's actually asking, where are you lying down on the pasture? Because I want to be with you. I want to lying down. I want to be in the same pasture you're in. For why should I be like the one who veils herself besides the flock of her companion? And now Solomon speaks, if you do not know, O my beautiful among women. I do not know, O most beautiful among women. So from Solomon's perspective, this Shulamite is the most beautiful woman. As I mentioned, how many wives he has so far? He's got 60 wives. And then how many actually concubines? 80. Do you think there are like, Shulamite? No, they're not like Shulamite. Most of them are noble women. So from that perspective, you think there are women that Solomon's married to? Are their skins are whiter, more noble? But think about this. Why did Solomon marry to these women? Power, very similar. There's a reason why actually Solomon married to these women. That is mostly political reason. It's more of engaged weddings, which means in order for Solomon to have a treaty and foreign relations with all the surrounding countries, there is reason why he had to get married to these women and daughters of that countries of kings and whatnot. When you think about from the ancient days, even today. So you probably have seen even in today's world, a lot of the rich people, the people who owns, the enterprises or the big, corporate, whoever they are, so they're like really, really rich. Who do they really marry? They're married to the people who have another big organizations, big company, and their daughters. Why? More of connecting together with their powers, and then they just want to keep that big, sort of, what's the word that I'm looking for? They want to have their own empire, sort of, right? So even in the old days, when king marries, usually they marry to another country's, king's daughter. For the foreign relationship and for the political reason, for other reasons, not because they're really in love with that person, but it's more of exchange of their benefits, sort of. So this is more of an engaged engaged wedding rather than falling in love with someone and getting married. So Solomon's married to a lot of the princesses from other countries to keep the good relationship with the other foreign countries. But does Solomon really fall in love with all these women? Not really. But while he was actually getting married to all these women from other countries and princesses, and then finally, she found woman that's got nothing to do with this type of, the background. He doesn't have to consider this, foreign relationship or any political reasons, no reason whatsoever. But Solomon just fell in love with this woman. He doesn't need anything from this woman. He's not looking at her background at all. She cannot offer anything to Solomon at all. She's just a woman from, small town taking care of the vineyard. Most likely, this vineyard is owned by Solomon, because in the back then, in the ancient days, king owns many of the vineyard, and they're actually given to the people to take care of that vineyard. And once they actually harvest, they provide portions to the king and then get the little portions for themselves. That's how it used to work. So she is one of a woman from the family is taking care of Solomon's vineyard. So does she have anything to offer to Solomon? Nothing at all. She could not offer a thing to Solomon. But even though she has nothing to offer to Solomon, Solomon fell in love with this woman. When you think about it, if the Solomon does not fall in love with this woman, is there any chance this woman could even get to Solomon? No. She would not even get to Solomon if Solomon does not fall in love with her. She would not even have a chance to even get near to Solomon. But because the king, Solomon, loves her for no reason, Solomon is not asking anything from her. Is she worthy to be loved? No. It's just Solomon loved her. That's it. So think about it. Let's just apply the same things to Jesus Christ, to this church. Are we worthy to be loved? Can we offer anything to the Lord? Are we being benefit to the Lord? Does our God need us? No. He doesn't need anything from us, nor we're worthy to be loved at all. He just loved us for no reason. Do I have any reason to be loved? I have absolutely no reason to be loved, but I'm being loved. Why? Because he loves me for no reason. Jesus loved us for no reason. So that's the same thing here. And then Solomon calls her, "O most beautiful among women." You're the most beautiful woman. I mean, he has seen all this beautiful women in this country and as well as other countries. He has seen all this beautiful women. But he doesn't care about all other women. He cares about this woman. Why? Because this is the first time he fell in love with the true woman. Not because of other reason. Not political reason, not foreign affair, nothing at all. I just fell for you. That's all I need. Follow in the tracks of the flock, and the pasture your young goats beside the shepherd's tent. I compare you, my love, to mare among Pharaoh's chariots. So what is Solomon saying? I compare you, my love, to mare among Pharaoh's chariots. What is Pharaoh's chariots? Back then, Pharaoh is considered to be one of the powerful, rich country, Egypt, right? So what would actually Pharaoh ride? Chariots. Is the chariot made of, clumsy material? No. Probably put a lot of expensive, most beautifully designed, right? Expensive, right? Chariots are considered to be the Pharaoh's chariots are the most beautifully crafted with the most expensive stuff. And Solomon is comparing her to this Pharaoh's chariots. You're like, what? Pharaoh's chariots. You're the best. You're the best of what I've seen. Not like any chariots, but is the Pharaoh's chariots. Why? Because you are that beautiful to me. You're the most precious to me. That's all I see in you. So then Solomon said, I compare you, my love. My love. When he says, my love, you know what that really means? My love. My love is this. It's my beloved. Beloved, what does it remind of you?
Jesus.
Yeah, but think about this for a moment. David. What's the meaning of David?
Beloved.
Beloved. David. Right? David. Beloved. When you say beloved, you're my beloved, my fellow, my loved one. So, God loved us. My beloved, you're mine. So when you say my love is more the possessive word. You're mine. My love is not just love, my love. So this is how much God wants to possess us. Wants to really keep us in him. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with strings of jewels. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with strings of jewels. So from Solomon's perspective, anything that he looks at her, she's lovely. Her cheeks are so lovely because he's in love. When you're in love, you will love anything. And then others joining in again. We will make for you ornaments of gold, stud with silver. I will just decorate you with this nicely ornaments and jewels. Make you even more beautiful. And then now, Shulamite is saying, while the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. While the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. Doesn't this really remind of something? Let's go to Mark chapter 14. Mark chapter 14. We're going to read from verse 3. When and while he was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he was reclining at table, the woman came with the alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard. Very costly, she broke the flask and poured it over his head. Who did this? Mary did this. What did she actually break? Nard. Nard, the same thing. It's beautifully smelled. and she poured out onto Jesus. And same thing here. What is she saying? While the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. My beloved is to me a sack of myrrh. So, she calls my love as well. So then, why is she calling my beloved? She's also in love. And as much as Solomon loves her, she loves him as well. So, they both called it my beloved, my loved. To me, sash of myrrh that lies between my breast. Well, once again, this is the kind of like erotic words and expressions, right? So then, where does she actually put myrrh? Between her breast. Then what is a myrrh? What is myrrh?
It's another thing they use for fragrance.
Remember, when Jesus was born, right?
Frankincense and myrrh.
So, coming back to Matthew chapter 2, verse 11. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. What is this myrrh is used for?
Something that to deal with the dead body.
Correct. When Jesus died, the women brought myrrh. It is supposed to be actually used for the dead body. The myrrh. When Jesus was born, the wise men visited Jesus and gave multiple gifts, and one of the gifts was myrrh. Why would actually give the myrrh to a baby who was born that represent for death? Why? Because preparations of a coming of a Jesus who will die for us. Myrrh, as I mentioned, represent death. So then, she put what? She put myrrh. My beloved is to me a sack of myrrh. Why? Because Jesus died for us. Because Jesus died for us. The myrrh that lies between my breast, that myrrh gives a fragrance and then represent his love towards us. Imagine, this could be a little bit of erotic expression. However, imagine, since we're all adults, women and men, when you're actually making love with women, would you love your loved one's breast? Of course. Of course. Right? You will kiss. Imagine, put myrrh between the breast where you would actually love. That's the kind of love that you will feel. That he actually gave his death, die on the cross, to show the love for us. How much he loved us. Where he wants to be kissed. Where we want to be kissed. Right? My beloved is to me a cluster of a henna blossom in the vineyard of En-Gedi. The henna blossoms. This henna blossom is in Hebrew word koped. Koped. The koped means ransom. Koped is ransom. Where have we seen this koped? We have actually seen this koped somewhere. Let's go to Genesis chapter 6. We're going to read from verse 14. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. What wood? Koped. It's the same thing. And then let's turn to Exodus chapter 30. Verse 12 and 13. When you take the census of the people of Israel, then each shall give a ransom for his life to the Lord when you number them, that there be no plague among them when you number them. Each one who is numbered in the census shall give this, half a shekel, according to shekel of the sanctuary. The shekel is 20 gerah, half a shekel, as an offering to the Lord. You see this? In verse 11, then each shall give a ransom for his life to the Lord. What is this? Half shekel they give. This ransom for his life is koped. Same thing. And what is woman saying to Solomon? It says, my beloved is to me a cluster of a henna blossom in the vineyard of En-gedi. What is this? You, Solomon, you're my ransom. Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Imagine when man loves a woman and you're in love. The woman that you love is the most beautiful woman in the world. Even though there are many other beautiful women, but do you care? You don't care about any other women. It doesn't matter how beautiful the other women are. They don't care. The one that you're in love with is the most beautiful woman. Why? Because you're in love with that woman. And that's what Solomon is saying to this Shulamite. Even though other people looks at her and say like, dark-skinned woman, low-level woman, from Solomon's eyes, no matter what other people say, you are the most beautiful woman to me because he's in love. God falls in love with us. How does he look at us? We're the most beautiful. Among all other spiritual beings, there are angels, there are 24 elders, there are cherubs, seraphim. From God's point of view, he doesn't care about the rest of it. He loves us than anything else. He just looks at us, you are the most beautiful. And that's exactly what Solomon looks at Shulamite. Your eyes are doves. And the woman responds, behold, you are beautiful, my beloved. Of course, from her point of view, same thing. you are the most beautiful. Not because Solomon is the king, because right now she doesn't even know that Solomon is the king yet. From her point of view, you are the most beautiful man on earth to me because I'm in love with you. So they feel the same. The when Solomon loves the Shulamite loves the Solomon, it's the same thing. My beloved, you are the most beautiful. Behold, you are beautiful, my beloved, truly delightful. Our couch is green, and beams of our house are cedar, our rafter are pine. So, from her perspective, when she's in love, everything looks beautiful. This is the part. When you're in love, everything is great. When you're in love. Because you're blinded right now. Because you fall in love with, it's like everything, when you look at your surrounding, it's just a beautiful. Sun is beautiful, moons is beautiful, the clouds are beautiful, skies are beautiful, you're beautiful, everything looks beautiful. Why? Because you're in love. That's how you feel. And that's how God feels for us. That's how we should be feeling for him as well. And that's how this Song of Solomon starts. How beautiful are you? And God loves us so much because he fell in love. And why do we say fall in love? And I mentioned this to you many times. We have emotions. We have our rational. But when you fall in love, your rational part does not function very well. Logic does not come into a picture anymore. Yes, you're a logical person. Yes, you're the rational person. You know what to do, but you know what? Your emotional will overtake everything. Doesn't it? Because you can't control. Your logical mind does not function very well. It's broken. It's just like your spring is just like bent and then it's broken. Now it does not work anymore. Because your love is possess everything and it starts to control you. You fall in love. When you fall in love, nothing works. No matter what you try, you just fall in love. You can't control. That's why we use that expression, we fall in love. Because when you fall off the cliff, what happens? Can you control yourself? No matter what you do, you can't control. You're just going to fall. Right? When God loves us, he falls in love with us. That's how we should feel as well. That love that he poured onto us and how we loved him as well. Well, all day I've been talking about love, but this book is about love. And I don't know if you actually ever this is not really related to this Bible or the books that we're actually studying, but I don't know if you to read The Art of Love, written by Erich Fromm. Have you ever heard of that book? All right, it's a German social philosopher, and he actually wrote many famous books. And one of the books that he wrote is The Art of Love. Of course, it's not related to this, but he's actually just writing from more philosophical point of view what love is about. When you have lots of spare time. If you have lots of spare time, I definitely recommend for you to just to pick up that book and read. It could be really boring, but maybe it's just worthwhile just read. Once again, it's not related to this book at all, but this is something we should just learn about Art of Love, what love is about. But anyway, any questions so far? I know I passed like 11 minutes right now, but any questions about the things we covered today?